From Firearms Nation, and today, Nation, we're going to talk about seeing. So, I've already talked about vision before, and this should go to the other video, but I want to talk about seeing because seeing is one of the most important parts of the shooting process. If you break down the shooting process into all the different things of breathing and trigger control and follow through and all that stuff, I believe and I train that you need sights, you need trigger control, and you need grip. Those are the most important things. That can be a whole separate video because today I'm just talking about seeing, and when we're seeing, we're looking at our sights. Now, in the previous video, I talked about the relationship between the front sight, the rear sight, and looking at the target. But today, I just want to talk about what the seeing part is, because a lot of people ask me, can I shoot with one eye closed? And when we talk about closing one eye, we're talking about closing your non-dominant eye. So what is the dominant eye and the non-dominant eye? The dominant eye is the eye that you default to no matter what you're doing. If your eyes are looking at something, one eye is going to be more lined up than the other one. It's just the nature of our binocular vision. So a good way to determine which eye you are dominant in, I usually use two things. Now, the first one is probably one of the most common ones out there. And what you're going to do is you're going to make a tiny aperture. And aperture is a fancy photographer way of saying hole. So you're going to make a tiny aperture that you're going to put in front of your face. And you're going to focus on a single spot. So go ahead, find that single spot, make that small aperture right there. Now slowly bring it towards your face while still staring at that spot. Inevitably, what's going to happen is it's going to line up on your dominant eye. And for me, it happens to be my right eye. And usually, not to offend anybody who's a little bit different, but usually your dominant eye equates to whatever handed you are. Like if you're a right-handed person, you hold the gun. I can't do a video without my SIG P320. I grip the gun with my right hand, I bat, I catch, I throw, everything with my right hand, and I just happen to be right eye dominant. And that usually works out very well, especially when you need to shoot around barricades, etc. For those of you who are cross-eyed dominant, there are different things that we can do, and we'll discuss those. So now that you've found that one way of figuring out which dominant eye you have, there is another way of doing it, a simpler, quicker way that I've discovered and was taught to me by an old friend of mine. Basically, you're going to just look down at your nose. Go ahead, look down at your nose. Your nose will be seen with your dominant eye. Don't know exactly what's going on there, but what I think is happening is your eye is just a little bit stronger with the vision. It's picking up the it's picking up the nose, whereas your non-dominant eye doesn't even make the effort. I am not a physician. I am not an ophthalmologist, optometrist, optician, whatever opt you are. I am not one of them. But I am right eye dominant. When I grip my gun and I am looking at my sights, I usually line them up in front of my dominant eye. Now, if you're cross-eye dominant, what I see people do all the time is when they present the gun out, they crank their head so that their dominant eye is looking down your sights. But what that does is it contorts your head in some crazy position. An easy fix for that, which is going to require dry practice daily for at least 15 minutes a day, is to present the gun to your dominant eye. Now for me, since I'm right eye dominant, it feels weird, but if you're cross-eye dominant, every time you present that gun, you're going to present it to the left eye. Forget all those years of bad teaching, if it was in an academy, if it was a older sibling, an uncle, whatever. Forget the thought where they told you got to turn your head. No, You're not going to turn your head in a gunfight. You're not going to turn your head in competition. You need to put that sight in front of your dominant eye, whichever one it is. That's going to require practice because this is not really functional. I am putting tension in my face, losing my peripheral vision. Not a good technique. So let's get back to something I had talked about at the beginning is using both eyes while shooting, or should I close one eye? Here's what I tell people. You got to think in context of what's going on. For a lot of people, it's hard for them to see the sight in front of them with both eyes. So what they end up doing is closing one eye. And sometimes I see it really dramatic where they're trying to crush their eyelids. Again, you're putting tension into your face, not good. So if they close their eyes, do it with a relaxed face, or even better, you can just slightly occlude your eye by slowly closing it, or maybe even putting some cloudy tape, the Scotch tape that is not see-through, and put that on your lens. So that way you can keep your eye open, but you're not seeing, and your eye can focus. That's one way, but that's kind of a cheap way, because in reality, under stress, especially in the stress of a gunfight, someone is trying to kill you. Your blood is going to be rushing to the extremities. In that fight or flight response, blood is flowing to the internal organs, flowing to your hands and your feet, and flowing to your eyes so you can see. Your eyes are going to be bugging out. Go ahead and look at any picture of some guy who's in a crisis situation under the threat of death. Their eyes are bugging out. Your eyes are going to be bugging out. You're not going to have the ability to sit there and close one eye to get a nice shot. No, you're going to be drawing that gun, punching it out, and just going for it. So why not practice doing that? Not practice bugging your eyes out, but just practice shooting with both eyes open. Once you do it, it gets easier. And the more you do it, it just becomes something you do. And then when you really need to take that long distance, 50-yard precision shot, and you want to get that super tight focus, if you want, go ahead and close that left eye. But for everyday shooting, 25 yards and in, it is so easy once you learn just to focus on that front sight with both eyes open. Here's a trick that I learned that really worked when I first started doing it, because believe it or not, I was once a closing eye type shooter. So what I did is every time when I looked at that front sight, I would see two sights. And that would be bothersome. I didn't know which one to look at. It was too distracting. But I would bring up that front sight. So I'm here, and then I would just bring it up. So now that front sight is crystal clear, because what's happening, I'm looking at the front sight inside of the rear sight, and my eye is going back and forth trying to figure out which one to focus on, and that causes that, blurry vision or double vision. By bringing up that front sight, now I can focus on it. And then once I focus on it, I bring it back into the notch. So essentially I'm here, I'll focus on it, now I brought it back in, and now it's crystal clear. And I would do this over and over again, and guess what? Dry practice, dry practice, dry practice. It's just something that I do, and bam, I have it, and it works for me. And having both eyes open and not trying to close one eye, it gives me better depth perception, and it also gives me better peripheral, because if I'm closing this eye, I'm not seeing anything until it comes right about there. Come on, tactical guys, is that a good thing or a bad thing? So this is something that you need to work on. It is something that is very important to your shooting. I'd like to hear if you have a different kind of technique to get to be a two-eyed open shooter. If you can, leave a comment down below. Let me know what you did. Also, if this is your first time here, please hit subscribe. So that way, when I post out this new content, you'll get it as soon as possible. This is Arik for Firearms Nation. Join the nation.